Welcome to the Life and Recovery Podcast. My name is Mark Schwallen.
I'm Elise Eversole.
Good to meet you guys. So we started a podcast to talk about life in recovery. We ended up starting an organization a few years back that helps people that struggle with mental health and substance use, and one of the most valuable pieces of our program is the conversations we have in group. And so we wanted to expand that to a broader population of people to have conversations about life and recovery. A lot of podcasts, as I was looking and noticing, were very curated with a lot of professionals and a lot of, doctors and professors and lawyers, which is great. I'm sure it's fine. But it seemed pretty far disconnected from the experience that most of the people that we were working with and that we knew were having. So our goal is that we are having authentic, real, unscripted, unrehearsed conversations about what it is to actually live life in recovery. Anybody from any stage of recovery could be, clean for a week or a day, or, hopefully at least a day. But to understand really what it's like to have their personal experience talked about. And, I want to be clear, we're speaking only from our own perspective. We're not trying to give clinical or medical advice. We're just trying to have open dialogues for people to have a different viewpoint towards what's it like when you want to start making meaningful changes. How do you actually start moving forward? How do you see the world differently? How do you experience your relationships? How do you engage with the world when everything you know is now different? Is that kind of what you were thinking, Elise?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that since we've kind of started this organization that was based on the same kind of principles of that everyone's experience is valuable and that every person matters, and that's how we really connect the most, I think, in recovery. And definitely for me, my journey of getting clean, I felt more open-minded toward taking action when I felt like I was being treated like a human being. When I interacted with people who could just say like, hey, I've been where you've been, and gave me choices, right? And trusted me to make choices that were good for me. I think a lot of times we get people in addiction and recovery, we get told what to do a lot.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of just maybe like stigma or just history that we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what's good for us, et cetera, et cetera. But when we're given that trust, that empowerment, those choices are empowering, and I didn't have those for a lot of my life. And when someone was like, hey, you have choices, and I'm not telling you what to do, but here's what I've done, that was probably the most powerful thing for me.
Yeah, for sure. And to be able to go through and see, really clearly, I just remember being treated like a subhuman being for most of my addiction. Just like you're just, there's different models or ideas that have been around, like, oh, just stop, just make a different choice. And though it sounds rational, it sounds practical, it was so far from the truth, from the experience that I or a lot of people that I saw were having. I think we do the best we can with what we have at the time until you know what to do differently. And being around other people who get it, who treat you as equals, who treat you that your experience is valued and valuable, and that you are as a person is valuable and valuable, I think is incredibly empowering. And you're right, because a lot of people come in and say, you know what you need to do is you need to go do this. And people are like, I don't want to fucking do that. Know that there is cussing in this podcast. It's just authentic. There's a lot of times there may be some pauses. There may be us thinking through an idea or somebody trying to come up with their own answer and solution. So if you're expecting to come into this podcast hearing some very well scripted, articulate conversation, you should probably go somewhere else. This is just us trying to,
messy.
We're messy and things don't go the way they should be scripted, and it's just real people trying to have real conversations about what it's like to live differently. And that's kind of the goal. And I think the beauty and the authenticity in that is that it's not scripted and it's not articulate and well thought out. That it's just people trying to figure out, how do I live differently when everything I've ever known says run the other direction? Because you're right. I think, before we had written language, we had stories and songs and just experiences. And a lot of what we're talking about here is people's personal experiences. And you can look to somebody else, hey, how'd you deal with this? What'd you do with that when you wanted to rebuild trust with your family? How did you do everything differently when, you didn't know how to do anything? And to know it's okay, and that there's never a wrong answer here, and that your experience is just as valid as anyone else's. Now, we may not all agree, and I'm hoping those experiences and these conversations lead to some place that can be a lot healthier way to live. But we'll see how things go. So moving forward in this, I just want to keep in mind that we're just people talking from our own personal experiences, and we'll see where this journey ends up leading. So
and that the people we bring in, the guests we have, it's the same thing for them as well, right? And no matter if somebody has 90 days or 40 years, there's everyone's experience matters and touches different people at different times. And that's, I think, why we need each other so much, and that's what we've found to work too. Like in the groups we have, in the materials that we've come up with that we feel like are important. It's just this common language, like you were saying, the authenticity, right? It's just how do we get all on the same page here and get vulnerable and get real, and still be moving in a direction that is a solution.
Yeah, for sure. You will hear us mention some books from time to time. This isn't trying to be a commercial. It's not trying to be an advertisement for anything, but basically when I started doing groups, when it was just me and this organization, before Elise being the very first person that was crazy enough to get involved, I started writing down different ideas, and the books developed. They're all conversational, and they developed from either things that I struggled with or I saw other people struggle with, but nobody really talked about. And they definitely didn't talking about in a language that I understood. So there will be a place in the show notes where you can, if you want to look at some of these, you can get connected with us and see what that is. And if this is something you find valuable, I'd really encourage you to share it with other people. A lot of times people feel so isolated and so alone and so like I'm the only person having this experience. Maybe this podcast, my long-term hope would be that this opens up the door for people to seek help and possibility, and we can take down the stigma that has surrounded addiction for so long that it needs to be hidden in the back corners of our lives and not talked about. Because I think that's what keeps people sick for so long, is there's the shame and the guilt and all of the things that come with my inability to speak my honest truth about what's going on. I ask groups all the time of just completely average people, how many of you know somebody that struggled with addiction? And every single time I do that, somebody personally knows. And I want the audience to think about it. How many people do you know that personally have struggled with either mental health needs or addiction, or a combination of? I guess if you think about it, there's on average 27 million people struggling with addiction in this country. was a statistic I heard. Now think about it, if each of them have two parents, which everybody does, whether they're alive or not, we're talking about close to 100 million people. That's a third of the country on just basics. That's not counting brothers and sisters and husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends and aunts and uncles and cousins and everybody that this also affects. It's a huge piece of the puzzle that gets affected by, or a huge piece of our society that's been affected by this conversation. So the hope is that we can open up the door a little bit to this being, a better conversation, because addiction is just the byproduct of people trying to figure out how to live a different experience. Now, it may not be the best way to go about it, but there's a lot of these topics we'll go through. So they're all going to be unfiltered, raw, authentic conversations about life and recovery. And I'm looking forward to what this is going to look like. So if you find this is valuable, once again, share it with somebody, because maybe it'll turn on and plant a seed or open a door, a different chain of possibility, the same way it did for me, the same way it did for Elise when somebody shared different ideas with us. And that's kind of the effective goal. So look forward to you guys sticking around and this continuing to grow, and we'll see what comes next. Cool.
See you in episode 1.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
All information and other content supplied or communicated in or through this video is for general informational purposes only and does not nor is intended to constitute legal or medical advice. Any viewer of this video should contact his or her own attorney, doctor, or other applicable advisor or practitioner to obtain legal, medical, or other applicable advice with respect to the accuracy, reliability, or potential application to such viewer of any matter discussed or portrayed in this video. Please do not act or refrain from acting in any way based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through this video. The views expressed during this video are those of the individual presenters only and not those of Choice Recovery Path LLC or any of its customers, suppliers, or affiliates. Any liability with respect to actions taken or not taken by any viewer based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through such video is hereby expressly disclaimed. All such information or content is expressly provided as is and free of any representation or warranty of any kind.